So in this module, we're going to be discussing polyphasic sleeping and power naps. Now, why this is so important is because a lot of you guys are fellow nap takers. We know you guys are taking them, but there is a correct way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Now, if you want to follow the peak performance theme of, maxing your output, really pushing yourself to the limits, even naps are something that should be kept in consideration when it comes to doing them the proper way. And we're also going to be discussing polyphasic sleeping. So if you're not familiar with what that is, don't worry, we will cover that in one of the later slides. So what we're going to cover is napping actually good for you, or is it detrimental? Can napping boost your brain health and performance? We're going to discuss the variables surrounding a proper nap, so again, doing it the right way over the wrong way, and then what is polyphasic sleep, and is it beneficial long term? So is napping beneficial or harmful to your longevity? So when it comes to napping, I actually really like it as a tool. I think it's great if you use it on a minimal, so not using it too much throughout the week. I think when it comes to napping, the way people overuse it is when you guys are napping on an everyday basis. So every day you are routinely napping, and this is problematic because you aren't actually looking at why you're so tired throughout the day. It's not normal to need a nap every single day of the work week. Now, sure, 1 or 2, maybe even 3 times a week is normal. I think that's when napping can actually be really beneficial, because there's been studies saying that when you nap around 2 times a week, that helps with hypertension and therefore helps with your heart health as well. So if you find yourself napping, almost 7 days a week, every single work day, you have to get to the root cause of why. So why are you tired every single day? Now, if that's you, I would start looking at your nutrition. I would start looking at your workload. I would start looking at your sleep in general, because you want to make sure you're getting a full, 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. But again, if you are someone who is often napping every single day, I would presume as a red flag and something that needs to be explored more. So, like I just said, I think napping can be a great tool if used properly. Now, some of the main benefits of napping is, 1, it helps you recharge. So if let's say you have a bad night's rest or something happens, because obviously we're all humans, things happen in our day-to-day lives, I would prefer you to reach for, taking a nap rather than reaching for coffee, because coffee is just stimulants. You're kind of running on fumes at that point. You're just spinning your wheels. You are pulling money from a empty bank account, basically, when you depend on coffee. Now, I'm not against coffee if that's something that you enjoy, that you drink when you're not tired in the morning because you purely enjoy the taste. That's totally fine, but definitely do not depend on caffeine or energy drinks, Red Bulls, Bang energy drinks. Do not depend on those for stimulus. Don't depend on those for energy. I would prefer you to have a nap, but don't nap every day. And then number 2, so it boosts your mood. Napping, just like a child, has to do with your amygdala. So when your amygdala is in overdrive, that can cause crankiness, moodiness, and this is something that we might be used to with toddlers. So little children and sometimes elderly people, they need more naps than adults because of this. And so napping can definitely boost your mood because of that. And then also number 3, it helps solidify memories. So just like in last week's modules, we talked about the entrepreneur brain, the different regions within them. And when it comes to napping and siestas, there was a study proven that people who took a 90-minute siesta had better cognitive function and had better memory storage. So they conducted some learning tests, some puzzles, stuff like that, memory tests. And what they found was people who had a 90-minute nap over people who didn't have any nap at all, they had like a 30% increase in memory when it comes to those learning and memory tests. Now, going back to why, just to do a little recap of last week, the reason why your memory gets better when you take a nap is because your memory is leaving your hippocampus, which is your short-term memory stick, I guess you can call it, and it brings that memory to your neocortex, which is your long-term memory storage. Now, this function can only happen when you enter a sleeping state. So if you have something super important later in the day, and let's say you're pretty tired from the night previously, or you just still have lots of things to do and you want to be on your A game, getting a 20 to 90-minute nap will be really beneficial for memory improvement, cognitive function, really keeping you in that clear state of mind. Now, you want to do around 20 minutes or around 90 minutes. You don't want to do in between, so do one or the other, just because you want to stay out of those deep cycles of sleep because you don't want to be woken up in them. So if you are napping for 20 minutes, you are only entering around N1 sleep stage. And if you sleep the 90 minutes, you're going through a full sleep cycle. And then napping the peak performance way. So there's definitely a wrong way and a right way to do this. So when should you nap? I say either 8 hours after awakening or mid-afternoon around 3 p.m. Now, I know a couple of you guys, some of our clients get this kind of dip around 3 p.m. What I say about this is make sure you're hitting, ticking off all the boxes when it comes to nutrition, your sleep, your workload isn't too much to handle for too long periods of time. But if you do get this dip and let's say your nutrition's on point, you've had some simple carbs with proteins, your sleep has been relatively good consistently every single night, but you still have this dip, definitely implement a 20 to 30 minute nap or a 90-minute siesta nap depending on the level of severity. But you just want to make sure that you are not napping too late in the day, because that point you will ruin your night's rest and it'll start this vicious cycle of going to bed later, waking up later, and then you'll just be groggy the next couple of days following that if you don't break that cycle. So just make sure you're napping around mid-afternoons or around 3 or whenever you get that mid-afternoon dip. But if that dip is consistent and you have that on an everyday basis, no matter the circumstances, that is something that needs to be explored more because there's probably an underlying issue that hasn't been discovered yet. And then where? So a lot of you guys work from home. That's awesome. I definitely recommend to sleep in your bed, in your bedroom where you normally sleep, because you want the area to be cool, dark, and quiet. Now, for you guys who go to the office, if you don't have a workspace that has perhaps a sleeping area that is designated for taking those power naps, just going out to your car is a great way to do that. Maybe if you're parking in a parking garage, just have headphones. You just want to make sure it's cool, dark, and quiet. And then for how long? So we've already kind of touched over this in the beginning of this module, but basically you want to avoid entering the N1 or N2 stages of sleep. So you want to make sure you're on the very surface level of doing that. That way you'll get a little sprinkle of REM, and then you'll hop out and you won't be in those deeper stages, leaving you more groggy than when you first fell asleep. So if you do take a nap, make sure it's either around 90 minutes to get the full sleep cycle, or to make sure it's 20 to 30 minutes. Now, if you're someone who can't fall asleep for, let's say 10 minutes, let's say it takes you 15 minutes to fall asleep, I usually recommend setting a timer for 30 to 45 minutes. Just know what your individual latency is and then add that time to the 20 minutes, and that should work out perfectly to make sure that you're still getting the full 20 minutes, but allowing yourself enough time to fall asleep. And I found a study that I thought was super interesting. So they discovered that naps lasting around 15 minutes reduced mistakes by 9%. Now that 9% doesn't seem like a lot, but if you're someone who's trying to optimize like the 1%, that 9% could mean life or death when it comes to making decisions in your business, with your team environment, negotiating, presentations. It just means everything. And another little tool when it comes to taking naps is that sometimes people will actually take a cup of coffee or some sort of caffeine. I usually recommend staying away from energy drinks because they have tons of filler, tons of additives, tons of fake sugars. So again, real sugar is 100 times better than fake sugar, like aspartame, sucralose, stuff like that. But what these people do is that they'll actually take a cup of coffee and they'll drink that right before falling asleep. Now, this won't work if you are doing the 90-minute nap because by that time the caffeine will kick in. But if you have your coffee and then immediately lay down and try and fall asleep for 20 minutes, by the time you wake up, that caffeine will be kicked in. And in this study, they actually found evidence that people had 34% less mistakes when they did this combination, which is pretty crazy. But this is not for someone who takes very long to fall asleep. So I know for myself personally, it takes me anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. Now, by that time, the caffeine would kick in. But if you're someone where your head hits the pillow and you're out like a light, this would work amazing for you. Or even like 5 to 10 minutes, I think you could still get away with that. Now, polyphasic sleeping. Now, what this is basically you are taking your 8-hour window and dividing it into multiple segments. So if we just clear this. So what I mean by that is instead of sleeping, 8 hours per night, you are maybe sleeping 2 hours throughout the night. And then throughout the day, you are taking like 5 20-minute naps. Now, this sounds ridiculous, but there are some people who actually do this. Now, I'm not going to touch on this ideology a lot because it's something I don't believe in. I don't think anyone should be doing this, so I'm not going to waste your guys' time explaining all of the minute details, but there's just more cons than pros when it comes to polyphasic sleeping. There's multitudes of reasons. First, being your circadian rhythm, what you need is cortisol and melatonin. You need a happy balance, like a dance in between those two hormones, and your hormones don't work like that. You don't have cortisol and melatonin firing off every couple hours when you want to take that nap. Plus, you are only really reaching REM and maybe N1 or N2 when it comes to these kind of lighter naps throughout the day. Now, this is detrimental because you are missing deep. Now, deep's core function is repairing muscle tissue, body damage, soft tissue, things like that. So if you're someone who goes to the gym on a regular basis, this will be very detrimental to your recovery and muscle composition. So when it comes to polyphasic sleeping, there's actually a couple different types. There are 3 core types that are the most popular. So you have the everyman, you have the Uberman, and then you have the Dimaxin. So the Dimaxin one is actually super interesting, and I don't know why anyone would do this, but I kind of wanted to share it because there probably are some humans out there doing this, and I don't know how or why they'd want to. But basically, the Dimaxin one is where you don't have any core bedtime at all. So you know how all of us get the 8 hours per night? This one doesn't get any hours of sleep throughout the night, and what they actually do is they take 30-minute naps every 6 hours. And throughout the entire day, this only results in 2 hours of sleep total out of the entire day. Now, again, I don't know why anyone would do this. They're probably not doing this for long periods of time because you would enter a total sleep deprivation state, and that would be completely detrimental to your cardiovascular system, your immune system, your neurological system. So yeah, I just don't see any pros when it comes to this. And then we're not even covering a social life. So if you are, let's say you're sleeping 4 hours during the nighttime, and then you're taking these weird 1 hour naps every, couple hours, whatever it is, how are you supposed to have a social life? How are you supposed to attend business meetings? So again, I don't expect you guys to do this, but this has come up in the biohacking community. So just to kind of squish any questions you might have, or next time someone talks to you guys about this, this kind of segment will cover why it's so detrimental, why the cons outweigh the pros. Your circadian rhythm doesn't work like that. You're limiting your social life, etc., etc. So that concludes the napping module. I'll see you guys in the next one.